And we are live, I think. Hello. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS Office Hours. It is Friday. It is 4 p.m. Swedish time, and that means time to talk about SerenityOS. I am struggling a little bit today because I've been trying to switch to an earlier gym schedule and just got back from the gym now. Normally I go at night, so everything is weird, but it's gonna be okay. I just have to get used to going to the gym in the morning instead of the evening. Anyway, welcome to the stream. What we do here is we talk about SerenityOS and related projects, and chat brings the questions. We will investigate anything, technical, non-technical. Hello, Christopher, Sophia. Nice to see some people here already, and nice to get some confirmation that I can be heard. And Umberto, hello indeed. It's a lovely golden yak you have there. I hope everybody's been having a good week. I have been working on a whole bunch of things this week, and today I have to do the monthly update video. So I've just spent this morning looking at what other people have been doing this month, and it always makes me so happy to find that people were doing all kinds of stuff that I totally missed. Like there's been so many good things happening this month, and I was kind of unaware of them. So monthly update is always, I guess, it's everybody's time to learn what happened in the month, but it's also my time because that's when I really discover what's been going on. Anyway, what's up, Late? What's up, Alex? So nice to have more people coming in. Hello, Lolus. Lolus, that is a interesting acronym. Pregnant Pomegranate says missing things is cool. I guess so. And I just want to talk about all the things that I have been reading about in the commit history, but at the same time, I'm supposed to save that for the video I'm gonna make after the stream. So I'm just not gonna start talking about everything everybody's been doing in the month. No spoilers. Yeah, exactly. Plus, I need to actually understand how some tools work so that I can demonstrate them. Lolus says, this is not an acronym, just a childish way of saying my name. All right. And well, hello friends to you too, Teeny. All right. So we don't have any questions to start up just yet. So I guess I can talk about something random that I was working on, which is I was just trying to get the Notion website to load, which is it's like a note-taking web app. And are you going to load now? Are you not going to load? Okay, here we go. So I've been fixing all kinds of layout issues exposed by this website, and as you can see, there are still layout issues, but it does kind of look like it's supposed to, and all of these big gaps are just SVGs that are missing because we don't render HTML image elements that have an SVG image as the source, but like this, I don't know what, I feel like there's a name for this kind of website because there are a million websites that look like this. Maybe they're all using the same Bootstrap or some framework, but website that look like this are starting to actually kind of come together now. If we can just get the images to load, it would look 1,000 times better. But it is really satisfying. Although these weird glitches in the I and J dots, very sketchy. Let's see. Bart says single page apps or perhaps Jamstack apps. Yeah, I don't know what they're called exactly. I was thinking more like, what is the thing that they have in common technology wise? Like, are they all using the same CSS framework or the same JS framework or something, or the same template? Or maybe it is just the design language of our time that makes all website look the same. But it's a little bit sad, in my opinion, that so many websites look like each other now. And it seems like when people set out to build a new site, it seems the strategy very often is like, okay, well, let's make something that looks like other websites. And I worked as a web designer briefly in like 2005 and 2006. And that was not the that was not the dominant strategy back then. It was more like, let's make something that people have never seen before. And, I missed that a little bit. Anyway, let's see. Pregnant Pomegranate said, any kerning bad reports lately? So I haven't heard anybody complain about kerning after I fixed the kerning of Inter. And as you can see, it now kerns pretty nicely. I don't see any obvious flaws here. We are honoring the GPOS pair positioning table stuff. And for those of you who watched my video about implementing that, I skipped over some of the tables because I implemented like the class-based kerning or class-based pair positioning, and then Lucas went and did the glyph-specific positioning stuff. So we now support both types of GPOS pair positioning, which is really nice. So we should be doing this right, and it looks right to my eye, but I'm not 100% great at telling these things. I can tell if something is like super badly kerned, but if it's just a pixel off, sometimes it can be hard. Anyways, Jack Delahunt said, question, how does the Yuct type checker resolve imported types? Some types may rely on other types imported, etc. Also, how do you generate the CPP, the C++, allowing out-of-order types to be declared in Yuct? So I have not read through the last version of the dependency graph stuff, but as I recall, the type checker will build some kind of dependency graph so that we know that we're traversing things in the right dependency order. And the same thing is done for cogen, because C++ has certain requirements that like things have to be declared before they can be used, right? So we try to forward declare things, and then we have to order things so that anything that needs to be seen by a subsequent type declaration must have been emitted by the code generator before that. So it is, I forget who made it. I think maybe Ali made it. It's a dependency graph builder, basically. Let's see. Oscar B says, here's a question. What does a normal Andreas Kling day look like? Are you a morning type person or a night owl? Do you work in long stretches or small bursts throughout the day? That is a fair question. So that is actually something that is very different lately from what it has been before, because we are trying out kind of a new schedule here. My wife and I, and the current setup is I get up usually at 9 or 8:30 and go for a walk, and then do 10-15 minutes of house cleaning every day, and then get to work on Serenity related projects, and then at 2 p.m. we go to the gym and do either weightlifting or cardio, and then come back and do more work. And I tend to work at pretty long stretches, ideally. But if there are things happening, then of course there would have to be bursts in between those things. But I'm still getting used to this new schedule. I used to be a night owl for many years, but it's pretty silly. Like the reason that we're changing the schedule is because we were always going to the gym in the nighttime, and lately it's full of teenagers in the gym at nighttime, and it has become slightly hard to focus on lifting when there are all these rowdy teenagers making noise and like running around and not paying attention to what they're doing. And it just feels like I just want to be there at a quieter time. So we just decided to switch the whole schedule around and organize ourselves around midday gym instead. Anyways, that is a typical day. Hope that makes sense. Let's see. Peep Circus said, "Hey Andreas, I wanted to add a link to the man page website on the project homepage. Do you agree if that would be a good idea?" That sounds like a good idea, I think. And then Peep Circus also said, "I've made a commit, but Clinus said the main website isn't deployed from the main repo. If not, would you be happy to add a link if you think it's a good idea?" Sure. That sounds like a great idea. We should definitely add a link to the man pages. Sophia said, "I've been back to programming recently. One problem I noticed is that I tend to constantly clean up my code rather than implementing things. So my progress is very slow. Any advice?" Yes, don't worry too much about cleaning up your code. Depending on which stage of a project you're in. If you're in a stage of a project where you just need to sketch out a bunch of architectural stuff, or you just want to build sort of a vertical slice of something and get some feature working in a demonstrable way, then clean code shouldn't really be at the top of your concerns. You have to allow yourself to write ugly code and allow yourself to resist that impulse to clean it up, because there will be time later to clean that up. Sometimes you just have to sort of suppress the urge to clean things up. And I think, yeah, that's basically it. Like, you just have to start to tolerate making crappy stuff, and because it's part of a process, right? It's not like you're going to publish the crappy things. The crappy first draft is just a state that every project has to go through. And I think obsessing about cleanliness at too early of a stage is like not productive. So if that is the nature of your problem, then that would be my suggestion, to work on allowing yourself to compromise on quality while you're trying to generate quantity. Pankaj says, "Any plans on a SerenityOS meetup in Europe to start with soon?" So there have been people meeting up at various times in various places around Europe already, but nothing was ever like scheduled or a big official meetup or anything like that. The one thing is, as Kleines mentions here, at FOSDEM. So a bunch of people got together at FOSDEM, and I think they also applied to have like a Serenity booth or whatever, but the application was rejected by FOSDEM. But that doesn't mean you can't hook up with other people who are there with the same interest. So yeah, it sounds like next year that will be a thing as well. Outside of that, I'm not aware of anybody like planning to meet up with SerenityOS people for some reason. But that's always something that can change. And I guess if you feel like organizing such a thing, you can also take the matter into your own hands, I would say. In general, just like the technical aspects of SerenityOS, where things only happen if you make them happen, it's kind of the same with the social side of it. Like, things happen if people set them into motion. Jack says, I actually started my own compiler which generates C++ before Yacht was started, but as you can imagine, progress is far behind when you are a solo developer. But looking at Yacht has been motivating to see. Yeah, that's really sweet. It seems like in retrospect that 2022 was sort of the year of the C++ transpilers, because a whole bunch of new languages came out, kind of like independently, but people, it seemed like a lot of the motivations were similar, even though people were working independently and coming to the same conclusion that like, oh, well, I'm just going to transpile to C++. So it is funny to see how that is panning out. And I still need to actually go and catch up on what's happening with, CPP2 and Carbon and whatever else I saw that was compiling to C++. And then Klein is, okay, so people are asking about, is the current state of the website equivalent to the repository or not? Can we maybe change the process so that this will always be the case? We could probably change the process. I think that's probably okay. I'm always like a little bit, I guess I'm a little bit nervous about having people push something to a domain that I own without me knowing about it. But maybe I'm overly nervous about that. It's not the biggest deal. Probably, possibly, I don't know. But yeah, that we could set something better up than that. So at the moment, the way the website works is just, yeah, of course, Bart says don't do that, but perhaps let people propose pull requests. Right, yeah, of course, that's how it will work. But like even still, I would still be a little bit nervous about it, because I don't know. I'm. It's not that I don't trust people. It's just that I don't feel comfortable with it. I guess it is a strange feeling, but maybe that speaks to something that I have to confront in myself. Like, why do I worry about that so much? And maybe it's less of a big deal than I think it is. And Bart says, because your name is on the project. Yeah, but like hundreds of people have their names on the project. And the project isn't just me anymore. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what it scares me about it. I don't understand it. It's some kind of emotional thing for sure. Definitely not logical. But I've been through a lot of interesting emotional problems with trust in SerenityOS, right? Like giving people access to various things, like adding maintainers to the project, or having Discord moderators, or like even just like accepting code from new people who wanted to do something with the system that wasn't part of my original goals. And every time I had to learn how to accept that, right? And learn how to integrate other people's ideas, because I understand rationally that the system becomes much better if more people can put their love into it. And everybody's love has a slightly different shape, and the system has to change to accommodate all those shapes. But there's still like some kind of emotional friction every time that I have to learn to accept something like that. And I don't know, it's interesting, and I've succeeded at accepting everything I set my mind on accepting so far. But I'm trying to be like aware of it, and I'm trying to share with you now also that this is a kind of something that I consciously go through, and it makes me feel awkward, but I think that everything's better off because of it. So I think I have to go through that same process for the website as well. And Just let it go. Alex says emotions are hard. Yeah, they are. They're such a black box, right? You can't just like pick them apart and understand them like a simple computer program. You got all kinds of things affecting emotions, and it's almost like there's all this global state that affects emotions, and the global state is really hard to see. And even if you look at some tiny part of the emotional circuitry, it's still affected by global state that you don't understand. Anyways, Bart says you can't even decompile them because there's no emotion deobfuscator. Exactly. We're just totally behind on reverse engineering emotions. And I mean, God knows people are trying, right? Like there's entire sciences devoted to figuring out how human emotions work. But I was speaking to somebody yesterday who said that technology keeps changing, and if you want to stay on top of your game as a programmer, you have to keep learning new technologies every couple of years. You have to understand new things because the field is just shifting around left and right. And but something that doesn't change much is people. Like people have been roughly exactly the same internally for hundreds and thousands of years, right? And there's something kind of curious about that. And I think I never thought of it that way. Like whenever I would try to learn something about people, I would always look for the sort of the latest and greatest books about people, latest and greatest books about psychology or whatever. But if you think about it with the perspective that people don't change very much, it's just the environment that changes, then maybe it would have been smarter to read sort of the classics about psychology and then the classics of philosophy and so on. People in COBOL, yeah. Right. Like programming keeps changing, but people are still running COBOL programs, metaphorically speaking. I don't know. I'm kind of just babbling, but I think it's an interesting contrast between people and computers, that computers keep changing and people don't really. Bart said, that reminds me, how do you feel about the threat, if even, of being replaced by AI? I am very optimistic about that whole development. I think from my perspective, it's just a new potential, like new set of tools and new ways of working, and potentially very disruptive if really strong tools come out of it, really new methodologies and new ways of working. And but I'm excited to learn how to work with those tools and learn how to make the most of it. And it's the same thing that I've been doing for my whole career as a programmer, just trying to like learn new things and adapt. And I don't know. Somebody said that programmers are pretty well suited to dealing with AI coming in, to sort of take their jobs, because programmers are already used to having to learn new shit every 5 years or whatever. And I mean, it's an oversimplification, but we haven't necessarily seen anything super disruptive come in and like force everybody to change everything about how they work. But if that happens, I welcome it. I think it'll be interesting. And I think it's strange to me that so many people are choosing to be just default negative about the whole thing, or just choosing to spend their energy on trying to sort of debunk the capabilities of present and future AI models. And it's just, I don't know. I think I'm just inherently optimistic, I guess. And when I see people who are inherently pessimistic, then I get confused. Let's leave it at that. Pankaj says, I contribute to the Linux kernel for work, but contributing to the SerenityOS kernel and watching your kernel hacking videos makes me understand a lot of design decisions in Linux. Thanks a lot. That's great. I mean, that depends on what you mean by that. Like, if you mean that, because you could mean that, oh, I understand why they did this or that in Linux, because look what they did in SerenityOS, which doesn't work very well. And obviously, the way they've solved it in Linux is better, which is absolutely the case for many things. But I think the SerenityOS kernel is very simple, very naive, and not very capable. But I like that it is simple, and I want it to become simpler, especially the sort of the core architectural bits, the memory management and file system stuff. Way too complicated. Scheduling, way too complicated. And when I say way too complicated, I mean it's way too complicated for the level of capability that it has. It's not a very capable kernel, all things considered, and it has no right to be as complicated as it is. And I know I talk about that occasionally, and then I don't spend much time working on it, which I do feel kind of bad about. It's just I have so many other things going on at the same time. But maybe it's time for the semi-annual kernel hacking sprint sometime soon, with a focus on simplification of some core subsystems. I don't know, but it's really, really nice to see people working on this SerenityOS kernel. Pankaj, are you the person who was doing the SD card driver for AR64? Pankaj says, my hope is to bring back some of those goodies from Linux to Serenity. That, like, while still respecting the constraints of the GPL, I hope, because that can be a bit of a iffy area. But, oh, you did the NVMe driver. Oh, very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, I have not tested that myself, but I'm super happy that you are working on that. And I think there are two types of changes in the kernel that I personally really like. The first one is simplification, and the other one is new capabilities. So what you're doing is adding new capabilities, right? You're adding better support for NVMe stuff, and I think that's great. We have been spending, there's a bit too much random re-architecting happening in the kernel, where like code is moved around or refactored in various ways that does not simplify anything, and it does not expose new capabilities. And that is something that I don't know, it doesn't really sit right with me. And when I see people adding new capabilities, it makes me feel a little bit warm. So thank you for doing that. Christopher was saying, to make the kernel simpler, is it time to pull more services out of the kernel into a more microkernel-like architecture? So that is not necessarily my personal preference. I think there is a lot of simplification that can be done within the current design space. It is just a overly complicated scheduler setup, for example, with the way that the threads block on conditions. It's incredibly complicated for something that's could be pretty simple. And we'll see what we do about that. I've tried to bait people into working on that over the years, but people spend like an hour looking at it and then they just want to do something else instead. So I think I might have to just suck it up and stop thinking that I'm going to get somebody else to do it. Bart said, do you ever mess around with hardware too, as in outside of making Serenity work on things, such as messing around with dev boards or FPGAs, etc., etc.? Not really. I'm not much of a hardware person, and I don't feel great about that. It's actually, I think I've mentioned before on office hours, it is one of the areas where I feel um, like a little painfully clueless sometimes when people talk about just basic like electronic circuitry, and I get lost very, very quickly. And I have my eyes on a couple of different like introductory courses for electronics, but I never commit myself to actually doing it. And it's one of many things that I keep pushing in front of myself, thinking like, yeah, someday. But it never feels pressing enough. I guess there's just so much to do with software that hardware um, keeps getting postponed. Bart says, I got some good resources I can throw your way. I'll shoot them over on Discord. Sure, thank you. That would be great. Like, I guess, yeah, that what I'm really looking for is just some like dumb, simple introductory introduction to electronics. That would be a good thing. And I see those Ben Eater videos where, where he builds 6502 computer or whatever, and then like puts instructions into it and has it run code, and that looks awesome, but it also looks like a big time commitment. And I've seen NAND to Tetris, which also looks awesome, but I think I needed something that's a little bit smaller that I can conceivably see myself doing. Anyways, let's see. Pankaj says, +1 for semi-annual kernel hacking videos. Yes. Fikizar says, do these streams ever not get many questions? There's usually a pretty healthy stream of conversation happening on these streams. There have been times where I think there was one stream where a lot of people were like on holiday, and then not many people came to came to office hours. It was pretty relaxing. But then there was like a small group of people just making jokes, so it still worked out. So it seems to be working pretty well, I guess. I mean, it's worth thinking about these office hours streams and whether they achieve something that is actually useful. Because if I think back on where I started doing the office hours streams, it started because of a YouTube comment where somebody asked me if I felt like I'm losing touch with my YouTube audience. And it was a really interesting question. And I responded to it by starting to make these questions and answers streams so I could interact directly with you instead of asynchronously by like taking the occasional comment and turning that into a video. And thank you, Nico, for the super cute hippos popping out of the water super chat. Really appreciate that. Nice to see that that you're sticking to the tradition. And but the point of the streams, I guess, originally was just to connect with the YouTube audience, and that is still the purpose. But I also want to provide an environment where people can ask technical questions about stuff they're working on in SerenityOS, and like if somebody's stuck on something, or if somebody has something that they just don't understand, we can look at it quickly, right? And sometimes I feel like there's not as much of that as I would have expected. And maybe a big part of that is that people are fairly autonomous in the project. Like most people figure things out for themselves, and they don't run into trouble that that they need to come here and ask about. But I always enjoy getting a chance to talk about random things and help somebody get unstuck. Bart said, you cannot measure community impact, but you can surely tell when the community is or is not working out. I legit think these videos help form it a lot. Well, that's a good sentiment, and I hope that is true. And I think I try to be as welcoming as possible in these sessions, right? And try to speak with everybody about whatever comes up, and because that's kind of the tone I guess I want the whole community to have, is that it's a welcoming, friendly community where any kind of technical questions are welcomed, and as long as you can make yourself understood, then we can have a conversation, and that seems to be working out. There are times when I don't really understand what somebody's asking, and then I say that I don't understand, and sometimes they try again and it works out. But I always do feel a little bit bad if somebody says something, I don't understand it, and I tell them I don't understand, and then they don't say anything more. I don't know what to do about that. I guess there's not much I can do, but that breaks my heart a little bit, honestly. Sophia said, what are hippos if not water yaks? Indeed. Peanut said, where did you get inspiration from for the UX and UI for Serenity? That is a very easy to answer question. The central source of inspiration was Microsoft Windows and Office from around the year 2000. So stuff like Windows 2000, Windows XP in classic theme mode, but also Microsoft Office 97, Office 2000, and also like the Visual Studio products that came around those years as well. There are little bits and pieces from all of those inspiration sources in the system, and also from some versions of macOS 10. There are some UI choices and some UI elements are macOS styled, and also the way that we use text and language, like English language in the UI, is a combination of the Windows user interface guidelines and the Apple human interface guidelines. So I've taken from both generally, although I need to do a better job of like writing down what those things are, because just because I know the specific mix of Windows Apple inspired HIG stuff doesn't mean that everybody else understands sort of how it fits together. Although people are doing a remarkably good job of just inferring the style. But I did start very humbly here a human interface guidelines documentation directory a while back, actually, and I only wrote the one markdown file, which is about user interface text. So it talks about capitalization, and that's all it talks about. So I need to expand on that and also add other things. But I think it is something that I want to do better. And if nothing else, just to have something to point people to. Anyway. And actually, no, I thought I had a book here somewhere about that. Let me see. I may have lost that book. I have a book somewhere about human interfaces that I like to read sometimes. Anyways, not here. Antonio said, Pankaj said, regarding your comment on not trying the NVMe driver, I do have a pull request open that made some changes to the NVMe driver. Maybe a good chance for you to try it out. That does sound like might be a good chance for me to try it out. Can I test it with QEMU? Antonio said, I was watching old videos and stumbled upon the one where you changed the Windows Server backing bitmaps from shabufs to anonymous files. I was wondering about the reason about it. So the reason we just got rid of shared buffers. So that's the whole reason that we moved to anonymous files. And shared buffers were essentially a sort of homemade mechanism that SerenityOS had in the kernel in the past, which is how we implemented bitmap sharing between GUI programs and the Windows Server daemon. And they had kind of a strange API that wasn't entirely Unixy, and I wanted to have a simpler API so that we could get rid of shared buffers and get rid of all the weird kernel code dealing with them, and just have something that had basic standard file descriptor semantics. So that's how we got anonymous files, and then wanted to just put everything that was using shared buffers, we just moved it to anonymous files so we could remove shared buffers. That was the reason. Let's see. Marek says, when watching your hacking videos, I often don't understand your pronunciation of API versus ABI. I guess you're talking about API as ABI stability is not a concern, correct? Right. I basically never talk about ABI. I never talk about application binary interface. I always talk about application programming interface. So I talk about API. Because ABI stability, as you say, has not been a concern yet. Much to the chagrin of some folks who would like to target Serenity as a stable ABI. But that's a very tiny minority of people. Let's see. Peep Circus says, as a British Earl Grey enjoyer, I've been meaning to tell you to try T-Pig's Earl Grey. It's the real deal, though definitely a treat as it's pricier than Twinings, and I think it's available in Sweden. T-Pigs. I am now interested. What is T-Pig's Earl Grey? T-Pigs. I shall have to try this. That looks... I mean, it looks like a bag of tea. I can't really tell much about it through the screen, but I'm gonna see if I can get a hand on some of that. Definitely always open to trying different Earl Greys. Although I have to admit, none of the Earl Greys I've tried so far have lived up to the good old Twinings, and I find myself pretty loyal to them. But if this T-Pigs is better than Earl Grey, than Twinings, then of course, I want to have it. So thank you for the tip. I'm going to have to check that out. Karthik says, is this channel mostly about front-end and JavaScript? No, not at all. We don't do much front-end on here. We work on a JavaScript engine sometimes. We have libjs, which is part of the SerenityOS operating system, and also used in the Ladybird web browser. And I do make videos about working on libjs sometimes, which is an implementation of JavaScript, but I don't write much JavaScript myself, just for the purpose of making, websites. Let's see. Miso says, does listening to music while coding distract you? If not, what style of music do you prefer? Yes, it does distract me very much, but I still listen to it sometimes, but then it has to be without words, because if I hear words in music, then my brain immediately starts listening to the words and thinking like, oh, what are they singing about? And I just find that takes away some small percentage of my thinking capacity. It might not be much, but I feel like less capable of thinking if I hear words in the background. So for that reason, I listen to instrumental music, like instrumental electronic music or piano music or anything without words, really. Andrew says, I think you mentioned in some car talk that you don't use macOS anymore because it was frustrating you couldn't just pop open the Apple source code and poke around. Why doesn't that apply to iOS? I guess I don't think of my phone as a computer in that sense. My phone is more of an appliance to me. I'm very normy about the way I use my phone. Um, I never make like I never write code for my phone. I just use it to access services and play the occasional game of Alto's Adventure or whatever. So I'm a total appliance smartphone normie. If I wanted to do anything code related for the phone, I would probably switch away from iOS pretty quickly. But as it stands, as a pure user of my phone, I'm really happy with iOS. So I think that's kind of the reasoning. Let's see. Evan says, do you keep a list of tasks that someone could pick up if they are looking to help out, but don't know with what? Yeah, kind of. We do have, on GitHub, we have a tag called Good First Issue. And I can't personally vouch that these are all actually good first issues, but apparently 17 issues are marked good first issue. So these are supposed to be, approachable items for newcomers to tackle. And that is the closest thing to a list like that. So, but if you are, a more seasoned SerenityOS hacker, then in general, most people just work on whatever kind of yak shaving things that they accumulate. And especially if you hang out in our Discord community, people just tend to accumulate lots of things that they want to do. And everybody seems to have a long tail that they're always working on. And I don't fully understand the mechanics of like how people figure out all these things they want to do. But anyway, the usual advice that I give to people who don't have something to do is to just poke around in the system until they find something annoying or something that could be better or something that's missing, and then try to fix that or add that or whatever. And that usually sets people on a healthy course of shaving their own personal pet yak. And I'd like to imagine that sort of having people come into the project chasing their own personal pet peeve or whatever creates a more like diverse focus within the community, because everybody is scratching their own itches. And for that reason, I personally never mark stuff as good first issue, because I'm a little bit skeptical of the concept, I guess. Because yeah, you can come here and take one of these, but then you're just scratching somebody else's itch, and you don't get that satisfaction of like going through the whole I'm annoyed by this and then learning how to fix it and then fixing it. You miss out on that experience. You just make somebody else happy, which has its merits, I'll admit, but that's generally my feelings on that, is that I prefer that people figure something out that they want to do. Sam says, this stream sponsored by T-Pigs. Yes, apparently. T-Pigs. It's a very, very like unassuming looking tea brand. Doesn't look nearly as posh or hoity-toity as Twinings. Like I got my Twinings bags, and they say things like, by appointment to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It's very fancy. I've been wondering actually, because my tea says that it's by appointment to the Queen, but now the UK has a king, right? So are these going to become like rarities that the ones that are by the Queen's appointment, and then King Charles asks for, I don't know, some new label or something, and these are going to be worth money? We'll see. Probably not. Let's see. Alex says, I have been Twinings wrong this whole time as Twinnings. I assume it's Twinings. Twinnings? Is it Twinnings? I don't know. I've never really looked into it, whether it's Twinnings or Twinings. I just assumed it was Twinings. Let's see. Peep Circus says Twinings doesn't know nothing about making tea. Ooh, I beg to differ. They are quite adept at making tea. And Clement said that the go-to coding music genre is chiptune. Chiptunes are a pretty swell genre. And perhaps it's a little too energetic for me for programming. Like, I was trying to listen to this like 10-year-old dubstep playlist, you know, when the world was booming with dubstep and brostep and all those things. And it was instrumental, but it was just too energetic to program with, and I had to switch to something else. And I feel like chiptunes falls into that category a little bit for me. Like, it's too hyper, and it's really fun music, but it's like same thing with the language distracting me. Like, the energy of the music can get distracting too. A lot of reflection on the way music makes me feel here today. But I think any music that makes you feel connected to the code that you're writing and it makes you feel able to focus is good programming music, right? DK37 says liquid drum and bass is good working music. That I tend to agree with. That can be really nice. Flow Writes Code says, almost at 40K. Do you have any fun videos planned to celebrate? I remember you talking about not wanting to grow your channel too fast about a year ago. Yeah, I still feel mostly like that. Like, it was moving a little too fast sometimes, and it got me all stressed out. Now it's been, I think it's been like growing at 500 subs per month or something like that. Between like sometimes 400, sometimes 600. And that is like a very reasonable pace for me. Then it doesn't feel like, oh my goodness, so many new people. And I don't know, it's just manageable. But yeah, we are coming up on 40K apparently. And that's really lovely. It's so cool that people, like, there are still new people who find the channel and think that it's interesting, the stuff that we do here. And I'm always happy if more people find it interesting. But I haven't really thought of anything to celebrate that in particular, because it just seems like an arbitrary number to me. I think I would have felt differently about it in the past, because I used to find it more exciting to see like these milestones. But at some point I just stopped thinking about them, and now we just kind of roll on. Metaturso says, keep making the same content. Don't change your style just because the channel is growing. Right. Yeah, that's kind of my feeling too. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. That is very generous of you. I may have to invest that in some fancy tea. But yeah, I think there's no reason to change it. I do have a couple of sort of mechanical improvements. Actually, it's funny. I posted a car talk this week where I talked about making 1,000 videos, and my mom watched it, and she texted me with like a bunch of feedback or things I could improve about my channel. And I just thought that was really funny. And she had a lot of good points. So I couldn't can't be dismissive of that. Like, my mom's got some really good insights about like how to make better videos. And I was just caught off guard by her watching it, her giving feedback, and the feedback making sense. So I do have some mechanical things that I want to improve, like for example, like adding video summaries and timestamps and things like that. And it's stuff that has come up before, But she made a really good case for the value add of just writing a summary of what a video is about and timestamping it and stuff. And I think that's something that I want to do. So yeah, we got some mom improvements coming to the channel, hopefully, the next video. Let's see. Peanut said, are there any plans to port something? I gotta stop clicking on stuff. Are there any plans to port something? Those videos were pretty relaxing. I don't have anything in particular that I want to port at the moment, but I also haven't looked around for interesting things to port. So those videos were pretty relaxing. That's true. And speaking of like the channel growing fast or slow, whenever in the past, whenever I would post one of those porting videos, that's usually when some crazy spike would happen. And like I posted porting Diablo, for example, and I think like 4,000 new people came because of that video, which was very overwhelming at the time. So I think that kind of experience made me a little bit apprehensive about porting stuff, because it feels to me a little bit like it draws in an audience which is like more interested in the retro gaming aspect of it than in the operating system programming and like browser building and stuff like that, which is sort of the core thing of the channel. But maybe I'm overthinking that and I've just got scared of the numbers. I don't know. Again, with the emotional things and like being honest with yourself about what really scares you. It's always challenging, but you do have to look inwards. Metatursa says, always listen to mom. Mums know best. Yeah, they do have a lot of good advice. Those mums. Let's see. Leonardo says, how do you choose when you will record a video for the channel? I think you're working on the project almost every day, what means a lot of potential content. Yeah, so I have to stop clicking on stuff. I typically make a video if I have some task that fulfills two main criteria. The first one is that it will be an interesting task to make a video about. And the second one is that it has to fit in, usually I think 2 hours or less. And if I'm confident that I can do something in 2 hours or less, and I'm confident that it would be interesting to at least some people, then that's usually when I decide to make a video. And I think over time, honestly, I've become more conservative about what I consider interesting. And that kind of leads me to make fewer videos, which I'm not entirely happy about. And maybe I do need to relax my my ideas about that a little bit and be willing to make things that maybe don't seem as interesting to me because they're still interesting to others. That is a little bit confusing. It's always something that I try to think about. And when I say it out loud now, I think that I do need to relax that. I think I've become a little bit too narrow in that regard. Anyways, it is 5 p.m. So I have to go because I have to go and make a monthly update video. So this will be the end of the stream. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate all the company and all the questions and comments and tea tips and super chats and anybody sending introduction to electronics resources like Bart. That is always appreciated. Don't make it too complicated, please. I don't know much about electronics. And yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. And I will see you all next time.